Start the meeting. First, we'll say the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we are going to open the meeting. Call to order. At the beginnings of our meeting here, we usually open it up for anybody that comes in here that would like to talk to about an unrelated matter that is on our agenda. You have 2 minutes. Is there anyone here that had anything to say within that 2 minutes? If you're here for the public hearing or for the fiber, we'll give you an opportunity at that time. If not, we'll move on. Approval of the agenda. Aaron, do you have anything?
There's an item on the consent agenda that I just very recently provided the handout for that. It's a resolution regarding subdivisions of land in the city, and that's just part of the consent agenda. If you have any questions, I can answer the questions.
We can do that. Rob, do you have anything to add?
No, sir.
Pete?
Streetlights.
Streetlights.
New business under...
We'll put that under E.
What Pete's adding, streetlights?
Yep. And Julie, did you have anything?
I do not.
Dale?
No, Mr. Mayor.
And, okay. If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion made by Rob, seconded by Julie. Is there any further discussion? If not, proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The consent agenda. Aaron, did you want to comment a little bit more about that?
Yeah, just a brief comment. It's you should have proposed resolution 2019-17 in front of you. There's a state statute that allows the city to basically have approval before a lot can be subdivided, and so then the person wanting to subdivide would have to present it to the city to get a certificate of approval. The reason being is we don't want smaller lots being carved off. We want to keep buildable lots. So I'm recommending that the city elect to be governed by that statute.
And the planning commission discussed it at their last meeting and recommended approval on it also.
And the planning commission would be the ones that would review any request? Okay.
Okay, are there any other questions concerning anything on the consent agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion made by Dale,
Second.
seconded by Rob. Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? If not, proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We will now open up our public hearing on the improvements, 2020A improvement hearing. Ryan?
Jenny, is it going to be easier for me to just run the
You wanna? That one's live, that silver one. I'll have to run it because I can't unplug it from the HDMI or it won't.
Good evening, my name is Ryan Gutzel. I'm a civil engineer with ISG in Mankato and also a city engineer. I'm here tonight to present on the potential 2020 street and utility improvement project, which is going to be hard to do this. No, that's okay. So the scope of the project is essentially Hennepin Street, which is also State Aid Highway 32, from 2nd Street to Minnesota State Highway 19, which is also 4th Street, and Carver Street, between the same two streets, from 2nd Street to 4th Street. The existing sanitary sewer is all 8-inch vitrified clay pipe, or VCP, except for one block, which is 10-inch VCP. And then the existing crossings of Highway 19 are ductile iron pipe. The age, and essentially, it's kind of split into two different systems. The north half, which would be north of 3rd Street, is over 60 years old and drains north to the A Street trunk line. And then the area south of 3rd Street is over 100 years old, and it flows down south to the 1st Street trunk line. The existing manholes are all brick and mortar construction. The city did have televising of the sanitary sewer completed in 2014 and 15, and for mainly two reasons: to identify sources of inflow and infiltration, which is essentially clear water entering the system through, I guess, in the case of inflow, it would be a direct connection, such as maybe a perimeter tile or a sump pump going directly to the sanitary sewer. And then for infiltration, that'd be groundwater seeping in through cracks or leaky manholes or things of that nature. And the idea is that they want to find out where those clear water sources are coming from, because they increase demand on both the system of pipes itself, and also the treatment facility. And then in addition to identifying those sources, they also wanted to identify any defects in the pipe that might cause failure in the system at some point. For Hennepin Street, the worst defects that were found were unlikely to fail for at least 20 years. And for Carver Street, there was one defect that the inspectors felt might fail within 5 years, two defects that may fail within 10 to 20 years, and then the remaining were unlikely to fail for at least 20 years. And then there's a list of some of the defects that were observed up there, mainly cracking, and then some heavy deposits in the Minnesota 19 crossings on Highway 19. It's probably kind of tough to see, but they were so bad that they couldn't televise one of the crossings because they couldn't get their camera physically through there, and then the other one they had to go from both directions, and they were barely able to televise that section. And there's a picture of one of the worst cracks. That's the crack they believe could possibly fail within 5 years. The existing water main ranges from 4 to 6 inches in size and is believed to be ducted or cast iron pipe. We did not have any record showing how old the pipe was, but it's likely similar in age to that sanitary sewer. The 6-inch mains do meet current fire protection standards. However, the 4-inch mains do not. Although the 6-inch mains do meet current standards, typically 8-inch mains are installed in a lot of cases due to minimum residual pressure requirements. In regards to storm sewer, there's not really a whole lot of storm sewer on this site. It's mainly in 3 different intersections. For Cassatt 32 and Hennepin Street on the north end near Highway 19, there's 2 catch basins that drain directly east to the county ditch. And then there's 3 catch basins in the intersection of 2nd Street and Hennepin Street, and those drain south to 1st Street and then east of the ditch. In Carver Street, there's 2 catch basins at the 3rd Street intersection, and those drain west to the Main Street storm sewer that is south across the tracks, and then they also eventually end up in County Ditch 42. We did some preliminary calculations, and it's believed that they're only sized to handle a 2-year storm, which would be about a 2.8-inch storm. Current design standards are cities typically design for a 5-year or 10-year storm. On recent projects, the city of Winthrop has designed for a 10-year storm. The existing streets, Cassatt 32 or Hennepin Street is 33 feet wide. Carver Street is 42 feet wide, with conditions ranging from fair to good. The streets aren't in super terrible shape. They have concrete curb and gutter on both sides, with condition ranging from fair to good, and similarly sidewalk on both sides. The condition there ranges from very poor to good. There is some damage in some areas caused by tree roots and things like that. There are pedestrian ramps at the intersections, but some, we didn't survey them, but some appear to possibly be out of compliance with ADA requirements. So there's an example of that sidewalk that would be in very poor condition. So proposed improvements essentially include all the utilities: sanitary, sewer, storm sewer, and water main, full street reconstruction, including curb gutter, sidewalk, and apron reconstruction as necessary, and then subsurface drainage construction. So this is just a copy of what you have in the packet that we provided, and if you didn't get one, there's additional notes here at the entryway. Basically, the red lines on the plan would be the proposed sanitary lines, the blue lines would be proposed water main, and then the green lines would be proposed storm. For sanitary and sewer improvements, we are proposing to replace all the pipes with 8-inch PVC piping. As I mentioned earlier, there's one block that is 10-inch, but it has a very limited service area, so we feel that 8-inch size would be adequate there. And then additionally, we're proposing to reroute the sanitary sewer from crossing Highway 19, direct that block to the south, essentially to bring it all, I guess to eliminate, mainly just to eliminate those Highway 19 crossings. And then replacement of all those brick and mortar structures with precast concrete, and then replacement of the sanitary services to the right of way. And then in addition to that, we recommend that the city televise the remaining section of the private services, basically from the right of way to the residents, to make sure that there's no perimeter tile or I guess significant sources of inflow and infiltration that would be out of compliance with city ordinance. Some things that we consider with the sanitary sewer improvements, many of you maybe don't know or don't recall, but we did do a feasibility study for the city for some improvements on First Street, and that was kind of tabled because DFA had mentioned that there's possibly some plans they might do some expansion. So with that said, if that expansion were to take place, it might require some rerouting of those utilities down in the First Street area. So if that were to occur, and if these improvements were to be done, in order to accommodate a reroute of the utilities, if that expansion takes place, the manhole at the intersection of Carver Street and 2nd Street would likely have to be replaced at that time if that were to occur. But otherwise, essentially all the other improvements that we'd be proposing as part of this project would be remain untouched. For water main improvements, we're proposing to replace all the existing water main with 8-inch PVC. That would bring that existing 4-inch up to current standards. We'd include new hydrants and valves, and similar to the sanitary sewer, we replace the water services up to the right of way, including the curb stops. For storm sewer improvements, we're proposing to replace the existing storm sewer with 12-inch storm sewer. We're thinking we can hopefully get a little bit more grade out of it to bring it up to that 10-year design storm, but we won't really know for sure until we get the topographic survey completed. Now with that said, even if being that they are at the very upstream end of their respective storm sewer segments, if they're designed to a 10-year storm and the pipes downstream are only still to a 2-year storm, you might not see those drainage benefits until the downstream storm sewer are upsized as well. As I mentioned, the plan does include subgrade construction, which is basically a 6-inch perforated PVC pipe that would be placed behind the curb. And what that does is it helps keep essentially moisture out of the street section to help prolong the life of the street. And then in addition to that, 4-inch service stubs would be provided for each property, and essentially that would be used for a sump pump outlet. So residents along those streets would be able to connect their sump pumps directly to that subgrade to keep it out of the sanitary sewer. Again, there's some considerations here with the storm sewer improvements for a potential DFA expansion, and how we are looking at that is we would essentially reconfigure the layout of that intersection of 2nd Street and Cassatt 32 by adding manhole on 2nd Street and reconfiguring that layout. If that expansion were to occur and those utilities would have to be rerouted to the west, we could essentially tie into that new manhole without having to completely rip up that whole intersection and redo the storm sewer at that time. For street improvements, being that it is State Aid Highway, Cassatt 32 and Hennepin Street would be designed to a 10-ton design. And then we have included in this feasibility study a 7-ton design for Hennepin Street. So basically what that means is the Hennepin Street would just have a little bit thicker section, probably more heavier sand subbase, a little bit more class 5, and about 1 inch more of bituminous pavement. In addition to that, new curb and gutter, aprons, and sidewalks will be included in the street improvements. Some additional considerations, environmental review. We did not conduct a full environmental review. We did do a little bit of a cursory review looking at the NPCA What's in My Neighborhood website application. And that did show that the Winthrop C-Store was documented as a leak site back in 1990, but it received site closure in 1993. Now that doesn't mean that all the contaminated soils were removed. It just means that they were removed to the extent that they didn't present, if there was anything remaining, it didn't present any health hazard. So there's the potential that you might run into some contaminated soils, but being that it did receive site closure, we did not include any contaminated soil removal costs in the estimates. Additionally, there are some abandoned steam lines that we've been told may be present in the area. We're not sure if they're insulated with asbestos, but if they were, we did include some abatement costs with our cost estimates. Trees, there are some large trees along the streets that may require removal or trimming. As I mentioned, some of those trees are causing damage to the sidewalk and in some areas the curb. So given the narrow boulevards, there's a fair likelihood that a fair amount of trees would need to be removed. There's some private utilities within the streets, including telephone, gas, and things of that nature that might need to be relocated. And then in regards to street lighting, we assume that they would be replaced. However, the city may want to decide on what type of style they want to use, if they want to use a certain kind in the more residential areas and maybe a different kind in the downtown areas. That might kind of affect the cost, I guess. In addition to, I guess, just looking at, the existing and proposed, we did consider some alternatives, and the first of which would just be the do nothing, leave it as is. In regards to the sanitary sewer, that would essentially just mean that none of those defects that were seen in the televisor reports would be repaired. And again, the one was expected to possibly fail within 5 years, and that was in 2015. So we're kind of getting to that point now. It is over 100 years old for half the project area, and over 60 years old in the other half. And then the do nothing alternative would not allow for abandonment of those heavily deposited Minnesota 19 crossings. With regards to the water main, the do nothing would, essentially leave it as is, and those 4-inch mains would continue to be undersized by current standards. And given the assumed age, it's probably nearing the end of its design life, which leads to concerns of functions and function of valves and curb stops during maybe emergency or just routine maintenance activities. The storm sewer, it's not in terrible shape, but it is undersized by current standards, so that would remain the same under the do nothing alternative. The streets, as I mentioned before, in general, they're in fairly good condition. But if the utility excavations were done to replace utilities, essentially the whole street would need to be replaced. The sidewalks are in rough shape in some spots, and the pedestrian curb ramps may not meet current ADA requirements. And then just from a cost effectiveness standpoint, it's generally more cost effective to do all of your utilities at once versus doing them maybe separately from a scheduled street project, just because you would have redundant mobilization costs and possibly redundant street repair costs. Another alternative we considered was rehabilitation. There are some things that in the sanitary sewer that would have to be fixed before you could do a lining project. And then there again, it would not allow for abandonment of the Minnesota 19 crossings. In regards to the other utilities in the streets, it's really kind of the same as the do nothing alternative. The one alternative that I briefly mentioned earlier is the abandonment of the Minnesota 19 crossings and rerouting all that sanitary sewer to the south. As I mentioned, there are heavy deposits in those existing crossings, and then the elimination of those crossings kind of allows the city to be proactive versus reactive, where they don't have to be reactive to when MnDOT wants to do their Highway 19 improvement project, which isn't on the schedule as far as I'm aware. For a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan. So, for example, if there was a failure outside of when MnDOT did their project, the city might have to go in and tear it up, and then it might be getting torn up again, when MnDOT comes through and does their project. So it kind of helps avoid some redundant street improvement costs there. Moving into the design phase of the project, we would recommend that the city perform a geotechnical evaluation, which would basically be some soil borings, and then that company would provide pavement recommendations and let us know if there's any unsuitable soils there for utility foundation. There's various permits that would be required, including county and MnDOT permits and MPCA and Minnesota Department of Health permits. We believe that all the project could take place in existing right-of-way, but it's possible that there might need to be some temporary easements in order to facilitate construction. One other thing that would have to be considered would be essentially phasing of the project. One thing that's always a concern during these types of projects is maintaining access for the businesses and the homes. The scope or the area of this project, I think it's well suited in a way for this, because everybody, for the most part, has alley access, or they have access up Pleasant Avenue. So there isn't a huge concern with maintaining access to residents, homes, or businesses. In regards to funding, we anticipate the project will be funded through a bond issuance, which will be paid back through property taxes, utility funds, and special assessments. The special assessments, if they're used, would have to follow the requirements of Minnesota Statute 429, for which the preparation of the feasibility report in this hearing is one of the first steps. In addition to that, being that CASA 32 and Hennepin Street are the same thing, the Sibley County Municipal Construction Cost Participation Policy for state aid highways and county roads, which is a mouthful, but that's the county policy on cost participation for state aid projects. Using that policy, we estimate that the county would contribute, depending on fund availability, a little over $334,000. Opinion of probable cost. This cost estimate was based on recent bid prices in the area. So we anticipate the total cost of the project would be just under $2 million. And then with that estimated county cost participation, the total city cost would be about $1.64 million. One thing that we just wanted to add, the recent bid prices we've seen in the area, that's what this estimate was generated off of. But since those bid prices, we've started to see concrete prices kind of tick up in certain areas. So just something to keep in mind that those prices might be starting to inflate. Project schedule, this is kind of just a breakdown of kind of where we go from here and where we've been. So right now we're at the public hearing on improvement. The next steps would be for the council to pass a resolution ordering the preparation of plans and specifications. And then from there, they'd have to approve the plans, approve them for bid. We'd have to advertise for bid and then award a contract. And then construction would be in May 2020 with substantial completion that fall. And then they'd come back that following spring and do the final lift payment. If everything moves forward, depending on the bids and if the city decides they want to move forward. So getting on to the special assessments, we did do a preliminary calculation of the special assessments as part of the feasibility study, and they're included in the handout. They were based on city guidance and their past practices on similar projects, which basically is 25% of the total street costs would be assessed to the adjacent landowners, with the utilities paid for by their respective funds. The city calculates on a unit basis, meaning that each frontage is given 1 unit, and each side frontage would be given a half a unit, with the exception of the Evangelical Lutheran property with the church and the home, which was calculated as having 2 frontage units because of its long length. The frontage is based on the address side of the property, and as I mentioned, this methodology is consistent with recent street utility projects in the city. So with that 25% of the total street cost, the total amount to be assessed comes out to about $310,000, $674. That's, an estimate. That would be dependent on bid prices. So if bids came in better, that number could potentially go down. Now, the assessment policy, as I mentioned, the county may contribute towards the cost of this project. The city policy allows for outside funds to be used first towards the city portion of the project versus the assessed amount, but the city may elect to use some of that county cost participation or all of it to help bring down those assessments, but that's a decision they can make, I guess, at a later date once they know how much and if funds are available from the county. We would estimate that these assessments could be added to the property taxes in 2021 if the project moves forward with the schedule that I provided. The term of the interest rate of the bond would be dependent upon the availability. Could be 15 to 20 years at an interest rate anywhere from 3 to 5%. In some cases, assessments can be deferred if you're over 65 years of age or older, or retired by virtue of a permanent or total disability, or if the owner is a member of the National Guard or other military reserve and is ordered to active military service. So as I mentioned, there is a preliminary assessment roll that was provided with the handouts, and it's probably pretty hard to read on the screen, but at this time I'll open it up for any questions anybody might have.
Do you have something? Go ahead.
Yes.
Can you come on the mic? Yeah.
Yeah.
You should be at the mic.
Good evening and thank you, and thank you for the council opening this up. My name is the Reverend Eric Carlson, and I'm the pastor over here at First Lutheran. And looking at the assessments, that's a third of our operating budget. That's also roughly 11% of the assessment for the entire project. We have a very aging population in our church. Roughly 34 people worship on a Sunday. And I know if the street is torn up, they're not gonna show up. So I asked the council, I mean, I have a pretty good idea that this is gonna go forward, but would the city help with our faith community by maybe providing an alternate space for us to worship as a faith community going forward? And you're saying that the construction will take approximately time from, let's see here,
It'll be,
looking at May 2020 to June 2021. What happens when it gets cold out?
so the substantial completion of the project would be before September or mid-September. And what that means is they'd have to have that first lift of pavement on the street before winter. So, basically the only thing that would be happening in the spring is they'd have to patch up any seeding that maybe didn't take, and they'd have to bring that final lift of pavement. So they'd be bringing it up maybe another inch and a half later. And the reason they do that is because over the winter or something, some trenches settle, being that we're doing some deep utility work, that they'd be able to repair that before they put that final lift of pavement.
Okay.
So the street wouldn't be tore up over.
So it won't be tore up, so it'll be patched up during roughly the colder months, but then when spring comes around, essentially starting over again.
Not starting over, they'd come back through, they'd put that final lift of pavement, which would, they wouldn't, unless, like I say, they'd have to do some repairs for some trench settling or something like that. It wouldn't be maybe a couple of days that they'd be coming in and doing paving, or
Okay.
maybe a day
All right.
to, raise up.
You
some
would
gas.
have access.
Yeah.
Correct.
As of September,
There might-
the plan would be that it's drivable and usable. It
Right.
just doesn't have the final top coat on it.
Okay.
Except for maybe a couple of days in the spring when they're doing that final lift of pavement.
All right. Now, because, I realize, looking out my window of my office, I know that the sidewalk has to be taken up, and I know that means that at least the 2 trees are gonna be gone, so. But the question stands to the council, if this goes through, would the city of Winthrop be willing to help our faith community if and when we come to a point when the road's torn up and, essentially folks cannot get to worship on Sunday? Thank you.
Thank you.
Could use that Pleasant Street.
I think we can work some out.
If I could just maybe speak to that.
They have
Just
that
briefly,
elevator
so
goes down there.
with these types of projects, generally what we require is that the contractor make sure that there's access available over the weekends or even every night. Now, that might not mean you can drive in your driveway every night, but there has to at least be access for residents. So I guess in this case with the church, what we could do is include in the plans that, over the weekend that intersection has to be closed up, for example. We could add stipulations to the contract, to help accommodate access, for the church.
But the accommodation, my question would then be, we have 2 different parking lots across the street from the respective building. How would that work?
It's something we can take a closer look at when
Okay.
we get to the design phase.
All right.
Before.
Thank you.
I thought they had
Okay.
more people than that.
Like a temporary. bike
Other
rack or
questions?
something. Yeah.
Anyone else? Did you get your questions answered, if anyone had any or concerns?
If I could just add one more thing, there is a sign-up sheet for the improvement hearing. If you wouldn't mind, if you haven't signed already, please sign that on your way out. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no more questions, there is a resolution approving an amended well, we aren't even moving on that.
Bump one
Yeah,
over.
yeah. Improvement hearing, yeah. So, if there's no other questions, we'll close the hearing. Okay. The next thing on our agenda is the resolution approving an amended and restated intercreditor agreement with RS Fiber. Did someone want to come up and talk? What we'll do is, if anyone wants to make a comment after Jake is done, we'll go with a 2-minute comment period for anyone.
You want to swap these 2? Get Brian out of here.
Oh, you know what? Could you just give us a second? Yeah, Dale brought up a good point. Let's take care of the resolution ordering improvements so that Brian can get out of here, and if anybody else has any
Sorry.
questions. No, it's a good point. So, there is a resolution ordering improvements for 2028 project. To go ahead with that or move forward. Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve and go ahead and proceed.
Okay, there's a motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Pete. Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? If not, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those approved, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, Jake, Kevin?
Kevin made you take the hot seat. He grabbed wasn't already pre-wired.
So if anybody doesn't remember, I am Jake Ricky. I serve on the Arrows Fiber Cooperative Board. I'm a farmer over by Fairfax, and Shannon actually broke his ankle last week. So I was planning on him calling in tonight, but I called him on the way over here, and he said, you know, I'm on some pretty strong painkillers right now, and I'd prefer, yeah.
Some fun answers.
Yeah. Yeah, they ended up putting,
Straight legs, so that might be fun.
yeah, they ended up putting 8 screws in his ankle and a metal plate as well. So it was a pretty serious accident. But yeah, so the resolution tonight is about how the payments are handled between now and when the cooperative ultimately takes over payments again. And so it was our understanding the last time that this was voted through, that these payments between now and when the 3-to-1 debt test was met would be put on the tail end of the loan. However, once Jenny Bolton, Shannon, and us and the attorneys at HBC Schurz started going through the intercreditor agreement and the final verbiage there, they realized a disconnect between our understanding and between their understanding. And the way they understood it is that the payments between now and when the cooperative resumes taking them over would be forgiven. And so ultimately, it came down to a conversation, and I know Shannon presented at your last meeting, a month ago or so, whenever that was, and kind of went over everything. So, you know, if there's any questions on that, I'd be happy to go into it. But ultimately, it came down to a phone call between Shannon, Jenny, and the HBC Schurz attorneys, where they said, you know what, we're drawing a line here. We're going to have to take this back to the public entities for reapproval with this understanding. The co-op we have put together a letter, and I believe you received it, right, in your packet, this letter that says that we're willing to enter into a new loan agreement after HBC Schurz is paid out, and ultimately we could look at reinstating that debt at that time. However, for the time being, there can be no legal obligation to the cooperative for the payments made on our behalf. So we kind of had to be careful not to create a legal obligation on our side, because then it would ultimately reverse what the deal is that we've negotiated. So, yep.
Are there any questions?
Well, I'm more familiar with this because I've been a part of the Joint Powers Board discussions, but could you fill the rest of the council in? At our previous meeting, when we had discussions about this, there were questions about other financing options and a local company that might
Oh, right.
have an interest. If you want to
Yeah.
give us some.
We did, you're talking about Winthrop and Nuvera. The co-op did sit down with Danny Bush, with Bill Otis from Nuvera, and ultimately they did not have an offer per se, but you know, ultimately they wanted to have a conversation with us about what was going on with RS Fiber, and they said that they had expressed some interest in purchasing some of our assets, but as it relates to our ability to pay back the public debt, it ultimately did not have an impact. So there was they did not present any alternative that allowed us to pay back the debt faster, so there really wasn't a whole lot there. Yep.
Okay, at this time, we'll take comments. If anyone is here, wanted to comment about it, I know we have some other towns here. Yes.
On behalf of Oak Terrace, which is a senior community in Gaylord, Mick Montag, the co-owner, submitted a letter for the council to read. If you, I can read it to you, or you can share it if you'd like.
Okay, did everybody get a copy of that?
Yep.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments at this time? Not, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll just use my speaking voice. There you go. I'm Nick Johnson. I'm the city administrator for Fairfax. I started about a year and a half ago, so I'm kind of an outsider in on this whole deal. But going over the situation at hand, I believe going with this resolution and passing it provides the opportunity that the communities that were in as part of it can have some hope of seeing that debt being paid once again, rather than forever now until the end of it, having to pay those obligations. Thank you.
Thank you.
One other thing I forgot to mention, so we did receive approval from Buffalo Lake last week, as well as the Joint Powers Board, and the JPB last week went one step further and actually approved an amendment. Jenny, go ahead, or Julie, yeah.
You each got a copy of that, the motion from, an excerpt from the Joint Powers Board meeting minutes. There was a motion and which passed unanimously, stating that because the Joint Powers Board passed the resolution regarding RS Fiber, and the City of Buffalo Lake also passed it, therefore the Joint Powers Board highly recommends that the Winthrop City Council do the same.
Any other comments? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the resolution.
And I second it and urge unanimous approval as well.
There's a motion made by Julie and seconded by Rob. Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? If not, proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next thing on our agenda, we were going to have some discussion on the sex offender ordinance information. There's been some question after we've run into this, should we have an ordinance or not? So, Aaron, I'm going to let you take it from here.
The idea basically behind the ordinance is that it restricts where certain sex offenders may reside. So, for instance, within a certain number of feet of a school or a licensed daycare or park. And some cities, and I think Arlington's one of them, had a great distance, like within 2,000 feet, which virtually eliminates any possibility of them residing within that small city. Others have done lesser amounts, but the court case is the one that I think was included in the packet. That really didn't seem to matter. They found it was not a constitutional ordinance, basically because that's been such a highly regulated area by the state that the city is not permitted to further regulate in that field. So it's my opinion that while we could pass such an ordinance, it would be ripe for immediate challenge if we enforced it. So it doesn't seem like it's a...
I just had a couple of questions. One is, there were, how many cities that have ordinances now in the state of Minnesota? Was there 8? No, I thought there was like 90.
Yeah, it's quite a
Considerable
few.
amount.
Yeah, it's quite a few, but it's been a recent development that I've seen in the past couple of years where I think it's, it takes a long time to get these things worked through the legal system. So I think it's just a matter of time before it works its way up to a higher level court that is going to strike it.
Kibosh on it.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions concerning?
It didn't sound at that meeting like we had any choice.
You don't.
Yeah, and I'm not quite sure the gentleman from Department of Corrections realized what he said, but he had made the comment that they typically don't offend in their area because they're so well-known. Earlier, he had said there's something like 2,700 of them in Hennepin County, so all I thought about was, right, great. So they're driving out to our area, 2,700 of them, because they don't want to offend in their area. What can we do? And I don't know if there were any resources that will be committed to our local sheriff's department, our local police department. I heard, if you see something, say something. Well, and we're gonna monitor his phone. We're gonna monitor his computer. He's gonna have an ankle bracelet on for
It was a minimum of 90 days.
minimum of 90 days, and there were a few people there, my kids walk right by that place every day. Oh, well, he knows he can't have contact. Doesn't take a minute to take his cell phone and snap a picture of a kid out his window walking by. But Mr. Mayor, I agree with you. I came away from that meeting just disgusted that I don't think we can do anything. And it's aggravating, and I know it's aggravating for a lot of parents who are in that area, daycare provider, church, kids going to school. And I just feel like as a council, our hands are completely tied by one person said it, we're Christian, we like to forgive, and we like to allow people to have second chances, and I pray this fella has his second chance and he proves something of himself. I do. I hope only the best for him and also for our community. Question that I didn't ask is, what does his presence do to citizens living in our community that maybe have been on the receiving end of people like him in the past and now have to live in this community knowing that someone like that, maybe they've been assaulted or taken advantage of? It seemed like all the rights flow to that individual and no rights remained here with the people who live here and raise their families here, and that just gripes me, but I don't know what we can do.
The other question I had is, by not having any type of an ordinance, do we move up on potential, on a list of potential places for people to move because there is no ordinance in place, and it would be easy to move into that town as compared to moving into a town where there is an ordinance? And that was my only question is, do we get put on a list where there are no ordinances?
It's just gonna take one case that
Okay.
hits the Court of Appeals or Supreme Court, and they're all gonna be
Okay.
invalidated. So might we get by for a while? Perhaps.
So it's a fence, but it's a low fence.
Mr. Edwards has brought up a good point about the victims. Do you know of any city, I'm not saying we should create a new city policy, but have any of the cities looked at, I know there's a restriction on how close they can be to a school or how close they can be to a playground. Has anybody looked at how close can they be to a victim? Has that been tried in any of these city ordinances? I'm just asking, because that, to me, might be the loophole. I'm not saying we should start this, because we'll wind up litigating it. Let somebody else litigate it, and we'll.
He's something to do.
Well, he's busy enough. But
He's got plenty to do.
you think that something like
Highly
that,
overrated. Come on.
something like that down the road could possibly pass a test? It's not an infringement of that person's constitutional rights at that point. But, not to limit, like 15,000 feet where they obviously can't be in your town. But, could that be, 500 feet from a school, 500 feet from a victim, 500 feet from a playground? Is that something that you think could withstand litigation?
That's an interesting idea. I have not looked at that.
Mr. Edwards' idea,
Yeah.
I'm just throwing it in context.
Well, you
Would
cleared it, so thank
would
you.
it be any victim of
of sexual
Sex
assault.
crime or-
Sex crime, yeah, anybody who's had a sex crime
or
perpetrated.
the
Well, depending on what
victim.
the perpetrator is, yes.
You know, but how many people are gonna wanna publicly admit that they were, that's
Well,
the other side.
Right, that's the
you
other
know.
side, but, and that's, the problem is because they're gonna be silent, but the problem is they were silent for so long and they
Yeah.
were preyed upon, and now they're living in a community that they feel was safe, and now they know a level 3 sex offender's coming here, even though they don't even know the person. I got to wonder, what do these people must think? Am I gonna run into this guy at the store? Will not even know it? And I'm not saying it's just him. There are people, the fella rightly said that most victims know the perpetrator. So I mean, they could be living beside someone right now, but they're just not convicted, so it's a different thing. But I think it just seemed to me, I walked out of there just shaking my head, and it's like, all rights flow to this fella, but nothing goes to the people that are living here, raising their families, and to those silent victims who now have to live in a little bit of turmoil because someone like that's in our community, and it's not right.
I left that meeting, and I paid close attention because we're talking about almost literally my backyard.
Right.
I think the positive that I took from it was, and I don't remember if it was the guy from the Department of Corrections or one of the probation officers, but they talked about the one good thing that can come out of it is if the community is talking to each other and they're engaged, and that the danger of the known risk there is somewhat mitigated by everybody being aware and cognizant of the fact. The danger of the unknown risk is always there and could be worse, and perhaps if we're all a little bit more aware, we might protect somebody from that unknown risk too.
Yeah.
But do I like it? No.
Right, I know.
Okay, is there any other discussion on this? Is there any action you want to take, or at this time we watch what the courts do?
I mean, I hate to be the one on the hook for the precedent, but I think we should, I mean, I said this a couple of years ago when this came up, is let's wait till somebody litigates one successfully before we even look at it, you know?
Okay.
It's not at this point, I don't think it's a winnable thing.
Very good. Thank you, guys. It's good discussion. All right, we're going to move on to D, summer hour considerations.
After our administration committee meeting, it was asked if Melissa or I could stay with Matthew on Friday afternoon. A lot of times I have my hours in by Friday afternoon, and I can stay, but I get in trouble for putting my hours in too. So, and Melissa comes in at 7:30, and a lot of times she has her hours in by Friday afternoon, and Matthew leaves early Thursday afternoon, so a lot of times he's here by himself on Friday afternoons. And after thinking about it, I thought, well, maybe we should see what other towns do for summer hours. So I had Matthew post on the league message board a bunch of other cities that have summer hours or closed hours or other hours. And I thought, you know, maybe if we had summer hours, that would eliminate some of the who has to stay Friday afternoons when nobody's here, or, you know, I just thought I'd give it to you guys for consideration. And
Have you done a call count and a traffic count on the days of the week? I mean, I know by gut, you can tell me when your busiest days are and the busiest dates in the month. You know what they are. You've been here long enough. No, you haven't been there that long. You're not that old.
Thanks, Ron.
I didn't mean to make you sound that way. You've been here a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering, I mean, would that really, do you think a lot of the population would be affected if you guys went to the summer hours and you didn't have any of the coverage later on a Friday like we have now?
One of the things Matthew brought up was that if the 15th falls on a Friday, you know, that would probably be an instance where we would want to stay open till
Okay.
5 o'clock.
Could you, like, then that week, just kind of do a rotating where somebody goes home earlier?
Yep,
and
we
then
would
just
keep the
plan it that way
7:30
then?
to 7:30, you know, time, and we would just have somebody stay that
Okay.
day till 5. I mean, we can flex our hours how much,
Right.
but, yeah, I mean, how many of you guys have a cabin and you go to it on a Friday afternoon?
Right.
Thursday.
Yeah, okay.
So that's what well, that was it, Thursday, so that's what I was thinking, they're not even in town because they've gone for Thursday. I mean, you don't have a great influx of folks walking in on Friday to get information
No,
from
by
the city.
Friday-
Now, what about on the professional side, though, with our outside contacts, our INS, ISG, and
Yeah.
everybody, and lawyers and court?
I get hardly any emails on Friday afternoon.
Okay. Because it's not just inward, we gotta think about what about
Right.
people trying to contact us as well from outside, so.
Right.
I guess I'm saying, I wouldn't have an issue with it as long as we know we're taking care of the people, and, we publicize it, and then maybe they can then realize, I need to get my business taken care of on Thursday because.
I wish Nick would have stayed, because Fairfax does have it, and they did it, they started it last year, and they're doing it again this year. And not to say that if we started it, we would have to, if there's an issue, we
Right.
would, obviously not continue to do it. But I was thinking if we did do it, like, obviously, it's too late to start June 1st this year. We'd have to publish it for a couple weeks, and maybe we wouldn't be able to start till July 1st this summer, but then, starting next summer, it would be July 1st to September.
Do you want to say, since we're recording this, do you want to say what the benefits are of doing this so folks watching the council meeting can understand why we're even talking about doing this?
Well,
I have a quick question.
Oh,
first.
sorry.
No, that's okay, it's related to what you said. Is it, I'm thinking efficiency too. I mean, for Matthew to be there by himself, it's good if someone walks in, but is it more efficient to have him there when, you or Melissa is there too? Because sometimes questions come up, he can't answer, or you
no.
can.
And he can call me, and he texts me, and I generally check my email when I'm not here. But, so it's not like I'm not ever not work, people know how to get a hold of me if they need to get a hold of me.
Bother you after work hours?
Yeah.
I- I know what you're saying. I don't have a cabin, so I can't go up north.
Key's mine. I'll throw you the key.
Best I can do is put a tent in my backyard.
I'll
But,
come over and sit around the tent.
I often come up on days, and I'm not necessarily, and I like somebody that's in authority beside Matthew. I mean, I wouldn't walk into a doctor's office. I guess the thought that comes to mind is that guy is gonna have surgery, and he says, "Hey, how was that Edwards? He's all right?"
You've seen that commercial?
Yeah, well, what do you mean he's all right? I mean, does he know what's going on or not, And so I guess I like somebody that's one person anyway in charge. I mean, and if you wanna rotate that or something, fine.
I
You
think
work on,
that-
sorry, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think the summer hours are a good idea, because it's not like people aren't putting their hours in. It's causing, that extra scheduling is causing flex hours issues and overtime. I think that because everybody's putting their hours in, I think to close on Friday afternoon in the summer is perfectly reasonable.
And that's what I want you to talk about, because this will be aired, people, that we're not trying to cut hours. We're not
No.
trying to cut, you're not trying to get out here early so you guys can have a long weekend. You've got your hours in, and you're actually we're keeping an eye on the cost of the administrative cost.
Right, and no, and right, because if Melissa's here on a Friday and she's got her hours in, we're paying her overtime. I don't get paid overtime, obviously, but,
Then you'll work every Friday?
Yeah, I guess you're here.
I'm out, I got my hours in. You can close the meeting.
Now, tell me if I'm wrong here, but we work on overtimes over a 2-week period, over an 80-hour period.
Over 80 hours, yes.
So we could actually look at last week, first week of the pay period, and determine what day, second week of the pay period, we're not gonna come in. Or leave early.
I don't know
I
if,
think it's 40 hours.
I think
a
we
week.
have to,
80.
can we do 80?
You can do 80, yeah.
Okay.
Trust me, if you can do it for the Park Service, you can do it for the city.
Okay. I didn't want to say that too loud, because I didn't know if that was like, okay to do that, but that's how we.
Unless there's some
that's how we
strange,
do it. But
unless
that's-
there's some
is that-
strange language in the
that's probably
contract I
a
haven't
more
looked
Aaron
at.
question, but,
I mean, just as an
Yes.
option, not saying you should do it, just as an option to look at it that way.
right. But usually,
'Cause I-
like Matthew and Troy are the only two here
Yeah.
on a Friday.
Because I don't think a lot of people realize how much out of the office work is done
Right.
that winds up being leaving early Friday because they've spent 3 hours Monday night at a meeting.
Right, exactly. Or I was here at 6:45 for a chamber
Right,
meeting,
right,
or,
right.
some other meeting. So, I just thought, I know what Pete's saying too about having somebody in authority here on a Friday. And I know Melissa, and sometimes I do too. If I know Matthew's been here a lot on a Friday, I'll be like, you guys go home and I'll stay, unless I've had,
Right.
50 hours in that week. But, sometimes Melissa will stay on Friday and send Matthew home too. So it's not like he's here every single Friday all by himself all day. It just usually, around 2 in the afternoon, everybody checks out. But we can certainly work on trying to have somebody here more when, so he's not the only one here, so.
I belong to a mayor's association, and today, that was the question of the day. What do
Really?
the cities do? I can't believe how many cities either have no Friday hours, or they're done at noon. And a lot of these cities are larger than ours. I didn't realize it was that much of an issue until.
And I was looking at Fairfax's hours, so we would switch to the Monday through Thursday, 7:30. So we'd be open a half an hour earlier every day to 5, and then we'd be Friday 8 to noon. So it's not like we'd be closed we'd still be open for business for 40 hours. It would just be, we'd be open more Monday through Thursday and then
And
Friday.
I would be fine with that, of us starting something like that, and if it actually works and we don't get any pushback from the population and it actually fits their schedule as well, go into that permanently.
Well, and the
Not
thing
just
is,
doing a summer hour.
we have way more ways to pay now, bills. So it's not like people
Right.
have to come in the door. When I first started here on the 15th, they'd be taped outside the front door on, at 6 o'clock, and they'd be trying to shove them under the door after 5 o'clock. You can pay online. We have the Dropbox, there's many ways, auto pay and things like that. So, we can certainly try it. And like I said, this month, we probably wouldn't start till July 1st, we'd run it in the paper and publicize it and give people plenty of time and see how it goes till August 1st. And we could maybe reevaluate it at that point.
When are you looking at to end it? To start it?
September 1st.
Okay,
It'd be July, June, July, August is what I was thinking, right
Okay.
for starting.
but we'll do July, August,
Yep.
September.
So
We do
we'd
July, August, September, yeah.
be looking at 7:30 to
5.
5, Monday through Thursday,
Thursday,
and then.
8 to noon on Friday,
Okay. Does that
When
sound?
are you gonna start this?
July 1st.
Got it. All right.
Yeah, I would like a motion.
I don't wanna come in Friday at 2:30.
I moved that we,
I did that on Wednesday when like there's nobody here.
I'll second.
Okay, Julie made a motion to go with summer hours. That'd be 7:30 to 5, Monday through Thursday, and then 8 to noon on Friday. Motion made by Julie, seconded by Rob. I keep wanting to call you something else, but.
It's right there.
Yes, yeah, turn it my way a little more. There, perfect. The guy over there with the glasses seconded. Okay, is there any further discussion? Is there any further discussion? If not, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Pete, you had something on here concerning
Yeah,
streetlights.
I noticed that the street light up right here at the intersection is out.
Oh, okay.
And as I was walking around town here the other day, I was looking at the bases of some of our streetlights, and they look pretty tough to me.
The one right at the highway intersection
Yeah,
here?
yeah.
Okay.
And it's been out for quite a while. I mean,
Okay.
It's not, but on Main Street and stuff, those bases are rusted through. I just wonder, somebody should take a look at those and
I'll have to call
proactive.
MinDOT to fix this one. Our bucket isn't tall enough to fix these.
Can you have all of that? Is there another one across the street also? A streetlight on the north side of the highway, or is that the one you're talking about? Okay, yep,
Is that
that's,
LED? Is that LED?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I was gonna say, otherwise have Gordy pull far out of the shop.
right?
Yeah.
Was there anything else,
And then
Pete?
you want the
But, you know, I
bases?
hear a lot of talk about these
On the
lights
poles.
up here at the intersection, at the crosswalk, don't work. And I don't know if they do or they don't, but if they don't, we ought to get somebody on it to say,
Flashing ones?
the flashing.
The flashing
You
ones
know,
work.
since you brought it up,
I've
I
seen
would
them.
like to see the handicap crossings that beep, because we can't, I was talking to MinDOT about having different crosswalk, but because they're not audio
Yeah.
for, they won't change them out. So we have to get like the audio, like the ones they have in the cities that
Well, New Ulm has them.
walk.
Right.
But I would like to see something like like that more, because these don't work, and they flash randomly, and,
If
you
you
know.
turn too close to the curb, it'll
Yeah.
flash.
And sometimes I'll be driving through town at night, and there's nobody around, and they're flashing. So,
Cat.
yeah, something triggers it, so people know that there's not always somebody there, and I don't think they take them seriously when they're flashing.
They don't because they're not
Yeah, I was
right.
just told they just, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, you just never know.
Yeah.
While we're bouncing about lights and signs, can we hit the county up for a flashing LED stop sign on Grant and on both sides? That's their road.
Grant and First.
Right, that's Grant and First, right down there, Karen? Down by Whittakey's house, is that Grant and First?
County.
Grant and County One.
County Road 1.
Yeah, County One.
Yeah.
That would be county,
Yeah, see if we can get Becker and those guys to throw a sign over there for us.
Flashing stop sign, the north and south signs?
Does that help? I think you wanted to get one down there, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah, let's,
Been
I
doing
think,
extra patrol on it. People burn
Right.
in from the
yeah.
south.
Oh,
They
yeah.
come in fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know he's fairly receptive, so, to that, so I think he's got a grant for him.
As long as the neighbors don't complain about it flashing in their
Put some
bedroom
Christmas
windows.
lights on it.
All right, very
Just
good.
can't win.
I know.
City Administrator, your report.
Okay, we're kicking off the meter installs, well, this week. We met with Mike Madison of the Winthrop News, so there'll be an article in the paper this week about it. I know Matthew was out hanging hangers today on the first 100 homes that we're gonna start putting the electric meters in. Troy's been working with B&R on getting the water meters, and we're waiting on the meter horns before we can start really installing the water meters. But the electric meters, they're figuring they might be able to get 20 done a day. So that's, yeah.
That's
You just
impressive.
You plug and run, so.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
We're advertising for the new utility hire in the Winthrop News, the League of Minnesota Cities website, the MMPA website, and on our website and our Facebook page. Mitchell and Tiffany Hocker are working on annexing their property into city limits on Grant Street.
Who's that? Mitch and Tiffany? did
Tuffy
they-
Okay,
Newbarth's
gotcha.
old house,
Yep,
yeah. Nuisance notices have been going out. We've been getting some response on them. The police officer's been doing a good job. If there's any that you know of, let me know, and
Did you
I'll
turn
see
that
if
one in, Pete?
they have,
The one you were talking about? The nuisance property?
Oh, I told Jenny about it.
Okay.
yep, and then we can send them a notice. Let's see, we've sent out 4 hazardous building notices to properties in town, and we've been working with Darren on those. They have till June 14th to respond, and then if not, they will probably end up coming before the council for action at some point. The Park Pavilion Committee is waiting for bids to come in. We were supposed to have bids in last Tuesday, but everybody's busy, so we didn't get any in. And I just told the people who have them, when you get them in, we'll meet and we'll go over them, and then the committee will make a recommendation to the council. ISG came out last week or 2 weeks ago, and we did pick a different location because nobody really liked the location that we had for the second time. And Scott Keister was there, Chuck Tolzman, myself, Oscar, and then 2 people from ISG. And it's going to be back up closer to the street, but it's going to be at an angle kind of facing the tank so that the seating will be able to be spread out through most of that grassy area there. There is a slight grade, but they think we can level that out so that it won't be noticeable for people sitting there. So I think it'll be better there, and it'll be close to the street for easier handicap access for wheelchairs. Karen and I met with the league about insurance stuff, and she's working on updating some policies, and we're working on some stuff to make our police department safe and our employees safe. And let's see, we presented to the school board last Thursday. I think that went well. And MnDOT, Rob brought this up, and I thought I'd maybe remind everybody. I talked to MnDOT about Highway 19. And because we are not, and they're not ready to redo the highway, we're not ready for them to redo the highway. They're gonna do a mill and overlay of 4 feet on each side where it's the most traveled. Sometime this summer, I will try to get in contact with them at some point and get a date pinned down closer. I asked them not to do it during Fun Fest, but you know how that goes, so that's probably when they'll do it. So,
The headline for that, Mike, is light at the end of the tunnel.
yeah, But the best news that I have for my administrator's report is that the Dairy Queen has been sold, and we have gotten all of our money for utilities and the EDA and Winthrop Opportunities money. So, hallelujah.
Oh, on the road part too, I've heard from my neighbors, she called the county on County Road 57, will be starting, well, in June. They didn't say when in June.
Oh, maybe.
That going, we get 19 going.
You'll be
if
stuck
we'll
out
do
there.
Highway 8, or our county, if we'll do
Oh,
8th
okay.
Street, we'll just lock everyone in.
Yep. I'll walk to work.
Right.
If it rains, we can canoe to work.
There you go. Okay, as in the EDA report, I spent 33 and a half hours on EDA last month. I attended the Final Housing Institute. The majority of my time has been spent working on the school proposal and the grocery store. We've had a lot of meetings. I met with Mary Renner and Oscar. They're hoping to get their alumni, Winthrop Schools Alumni Association benches in before Farm City Fun Fest.
Concrete, Sam.
We sent out bids for the Park Pavilion project, and we've been working on that a little bit. I've not heard from the developers that I've been in contact with regarding housing, but it sounds like they haven't really been getting back to anybody, including Lori and Gaylord, so I didn't really feel too bad about that. And then I talked to James Schoenhorn about trying to meet with Carl and Betty Klockman about their willingness to sell that property out there, which reminded me that I did talk, last month we had talked about the data center with MMPA, and I told their attorney that we weren't interested because we really didn't have money for anything like that, and he said, well, I think MMPA is willing to give you money to buy the land. And I said, well, if they were willing to give us money to buy the land, that might change the council's opinion of the project. So he was going to check with them and get back to me to see how much they are willing to commit to this project for Winthrop, and then I'll bring that back to you guys for reconsideration, so.
The concrete for the benches that are up in the park.
Yeah.
They're waiting for Arlie. Oscar's talked to Arlie.
They're in.
Oh, is it now?
they put
Okay,
in.
good. Oh, well, then I can get the guys going on that, so that's good. But the MMPA thing reminded me too, they are really starting to focus on economic development now too, and Pete can probably speak more to this since
We were highly touted again, and then I'm just sitting there and saying, well, I talk, but everybody says.
So they
You know,
did,
so
they did
I
ask.
I really don't. They're going to California this month to give us another pitch.
They like Winthrop because we don't have the red tape with our building. You know, we can get a zoning pass faster, we can get a building permit through faster, we can call special meetings easier and get things like that done quickly, more quickly here. So, but they wanted to invite our EDA board to their annual meeting too, because they really want to emphasize EDA, economic development, as part of their community involvement, so.
It's good to hear.
Yeah, unless you guys have anything for me, that is it.
I want you guys to know that we were the founder. Sam Schultz was the founder of this whole deal. Yeah.
So they
What do you-
owe us.
Yeah.
Woody?
There we go. Okay, Aaron, did you have anything else that you wanted to talk about?
Kind of a typical month, nothing really to add.
Okay. Water and sewer? Okay. Dean Conklin was up here earlier, and I think you had an opportunity to talk to his son concerning some water that,
Yeah,
possible water main.
I talked to both Blair and Dean
Okay,
this afternoon, so.
okay. His concern is wanting to get it seeded so that he would qualify for the CRP.
He gave me another project. He said there's another spot where there's a leak. Behind, began with an S.
Sandquist.
Sandquist. I don't know who
That's what I'm
Sandquist
talking
is.
Okay.
Is there a pipe there or no pipe, or don't know?
There's a force main back there, but I do not believe it's leaking, but.
All right. Street, electrical, did you want to talk about the meeting at all, Pete?
Well, only that the summer meeting is coming up.
Those invites should be coming out soon, it's in
so-
Chaska.
And it's in Chaska this year. But I just showing Rob, I just got a notice from the association, just when you guys were talking about costs of electricity, this month we're $3.61 kilowatt, megawatt below Excel, which is kind of huge.
Yeah,
you know? So.
very good. Is there anything for fire department? Okay, ambulance? We have Karen's police report here. Is there anything you want to add? We're good?
Appreciate you pulling over that semi there 3 weeks ago. I don't know who did it, but they had them out by Dave's. It was hilarious. I could see it from the dining room.
And everybody's had a chance to see the planning commission report? Okay, and was there anything for the Irish Fiber report? Did we go over all
Pretty
of
much covered it.
Okay, cable commission, is closed. Any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made.
Second.
Rob, seconded by Dale. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
You know, they were talking about changing hours.
Meeting adjourned.
My opinion of that.